beginning in the 1980s, the police departments became a number-driven group. One arrest is one arrest. So if I spend a year and a half taking down a violent drug organization that's killed maybe 15, 20 people, and I lock up 6 guys, I get 6 ones. If I went out on the corner tomorrow, I get 15 ones. And they all count the same. There's no weighing for like, this is the murderer, we give him 15 points, and this guy's the marijuana guy, we give him 0.2 points. No, it's all the same.
One thing about a cannabis arrest is it's easy, it's not dangerous, and it turns into a solved crime very quickly with very little paperwork.
The whole thing is numbers, because numbers generate revenue. That revenue keeps Congress giving you money. That money, then you can turn around part of it and keep pressure on Congress.
You don't come up with those numbers, they retaliate by giving you bad evaluations. That's basically what they did to me.
This is a business. We have almost a $5 billion budget a year, so we run it like a business, and it's fair to ask the employees here to do their fair share.
It's not easy to get a trafficker. It's not like walking up to the corner or shaking the lockers of a high school.
You reach a point, especially as an executive or a supervisor, where you are now part of administering the policies, and you start to ask the hard questions. Is it really worth a police officer's time to bust somebody for a marijuana cigarette, take them off the street, put them in jail, book the evidence, write the report, and then be able to go back out on the street and attend to public safety after you've been gone for 3 hours for one marijuana arrest?
I used to go to meetings of chief police officers in the UK. After the formal conference was over, around the bar and around the dinner table, they were all agreeing that there was no point in keeping cannabis illegal, and yet what they said when the cameras were rolling, when the microphones were in front of them, was completely different.
In the 15 years I've been in policy, I'm a little disillusioned about how much we were able to achieve. I'm very disillusioned on the ability of leaders to still pretend we are achieving.
You know, we need police forces. If I was in charge of society, of course I'd have a police force. But I'd make sure there were sensible laws for them to enforce. And there are plenty of police who feel like that too.
There's immense pressure on the inside of these sort of professions to toe the line and just keep quiet.
The culture will eat you up if, in fact, you come out while you're a police leader. If they were to come out and say that they're in favor of taxation, regulation of marijuana, they wouldn't get their promotions. They wouldn't be able to move through the ranks. They'll be labeled. And I've seen that take place.
There's a lot of work being done on what creates respect for laws. To what extent do people feel that laws are legitimate? And if they feel that laws are legitimate, they're likely to comply with them without needing to be coerced into them and punished. And the research is suggesting that people want fairness.
In a sense, what creates respect for law is justice, seeing it done. That elicits great respect when you actually see it being done. There's another kind of respect, though, which is respect for the stick. It's like the force of authority. Pretty much marijuana works with the stick.
One of the consequences of the war on drugs is people have stopped looking at the police as their protectors and more see them, right, as their potential persecutors.
The police department basically becomes the other to the community. And once you have that breakdown, then information stops flowing. So you don't learn about crimes. And then the only crime you really become interested in is the one you can solve, which is locking people up on the corner for using drugs.
And a great metric of that is murder clearance rates. So a murder is cleared when an arrest is made, somebody goes to jail. And in 1965, police were clearing about 90% of the murders that were committed in this country. That means for 90% of the murders in this country, there was an arrest and a charge. And today, that's under 65%. And that's, after all the tremendous technological advances in policing, DNA evidence and all sorts of forensics and, expanding police budgets and that sort of thing. I think if we were to look at one cause for that drop in murder clearance rates, it's the breakdown in the relationship between society at large and the police. And, that, by extension, that is a consequence almost entirely of the war on drugs.
By having to uphold these outdated and failed policies, it ruins our reputation, and it damages the community relations between the police and the policed as well. Whole generations have grown up distrusting their local police rather than seeing them as a potential protective layer of society.
When you do this, you change the whole nature of the game. And from 1980 on, the police become more and more militarized.
The initiation of the drug war was the initiation of a general loosening of constraint on search and seizure. It became just part of police practice to be breaking down the door. We see it now as a staple of cops. That's now our reality. That wasn't the reality before the drug war.
Columbia Police search warrant! Columbia Police search warrant! Columbia Police search warrant! Bang! Search warrant! Search warrant! Don't move! Stand by! Don't move! Search warrant! Search warrant! Don't move! Search warrant! Don't move! That's on him? Yep. Money in the dope.
Now you see police, and most often they look like soldiers, right? They're dressed in black, they have jackboots and high caliber arms, and they don't walk the street and get to know the community, right? They drive around in cruisers that look like they belong on the battlefield.
Day and night, that's the difference between the Greenville Police Department's new SWAT truck compared to the old one.
The truck has a lot of bells and whistles, from the simple storage compartments to the gun ports on the side. They're actually proud to say they did not use any taxpayer money.
We paid for it with seized funds. It came out of money we had seized from drug dealers.
That's where respect is lost. The officers on the street have lost it. The institution itself has lost it. You're not being seen as anything but the other. People warring on us.
The war on drugs has had a puzzling effect on how society seeks to police itself. With hundreds of thousands of marijuana arrests annually, a new issue emerges. Once you start gathering a large group of prisoners, where do you put them all?
Well, private prisons are scary as all shit. And they're scary as all hell for a very simple reason. They make it highly profitable to incarcerate people.
We've lost track of how ridiculous some of the things we do are. So we're going to give people a profit motive in putting more people in jail. Gee, I wonder what's going to happen.
Corrections Corporation of America is the Hilton of the private prison industry, a multi-billion-dollar business that's getting rich off punishment.
We are CCA.
The more people locked up behind bars and the longer they stay there, the more money CCA makes. Last year, the company banked a reported $1.7 billion.
When you have a privatized prison, there's a contract between the state and the prison that the state has to maintain a certain occupancy rate in the prison.
Meaning that the state guarantees that the prison stay will be from anywhere from 80% to 100% full.
Crime could go down. It doesn't matter. The taxpayers are still on the hook, and the government is still on the hook for filling up your prisons.
Well, where do you get these numbers from?
The easiest way to make sure that the quotas are full in these private prisons is to get the low-hanging fruit, which is just the drug user as a criminal rather than someone who might need a bit of medical help.
And that means that every fourth person in the world in jail is a citizen of the land of the free.
You just become a commodity rather than a human being, churned through the system to make money for these big corporations.
If we go on down this path, we'll see more and more laws being invented and created to justify the imprisonment of more and more people. Public money will ironically be plunged into persuading us that that is right.
Each state is constantly arguing about the fact that they don't have enough money for their public education. But then at the same time, they'll take state funds, or in a lot of cases, federal money, and put it into the prison system.
Now, this is Carl Holton School, and it's been closed for some time now. And in its place will rise a hospital prison with over 1,700 beds.
California, since 1980, we have built 23 prisons. We've hired 14,000 prison guards, and we've fired 5,000 teachers.
West Virginia is strapped for money, but we're building another prison here. Got to. A lot of people getting arrested here.
Most states are just like mine of California. The largest, strongest political lobby group in our state is the Prison Guards Union.
You have unions that are lobbying to make sure that certain drugs stay illegal, regardless of how safe they are, to make sure that prisons are filled, because prisons extract money from the system. It's insanity.
It's not rational or logical, it's financial. Money is the backdrop to everything. You can't even run from it. I try to see other things or put, other perspectives on it, but it always boils down to money.
We've even seen places like Pennsylvania where judges have gone and faced high federal sentences for actually streamlining children into these private facilities.
A former juvenile court judge in Pennsylvania could face more than 10 years in prison after being convicted in a kids for cash scheme. Prosecutors say he used children as pawns, locking them up unjustly in a plot to get rich.
Remember my son? An all-star wrestler? He's gone! He shot himself in the heart! You scumbag! You ruined my fucking life!
And what could be more harmful to oneself than being sent to prison? No effect of the drug can be possibly as harmful as doing jail time for consuming it.
And they end up with a criminal record. What does that do to them? They could lose their job. In some parts of the world, they will lose their housing. They will lose the right to education.
There's a fucking kid who just got arrested recently for having marijuana on him. They put him in jail, and he had an extreme food allergy. He asked them if there was any milk in any of their products. They wouldn't answer him. They gave him food. He ate it. He fucking died in jail.
How criminal is that? What they've made illegal isn't the problem, right? The problem is the policy itself.
This business about drug offenses, I mean, it's time we stop locking up people for possession of marijuana.
Selects people that it puts in jail. So we see widely disparate penalties among socioeconomic groups, among racial groups.
White people and black people in this country do drugs at the same rate. So they should be arrested at the same rate. But the reality is, of course, that's not remotely true. Across the nation, blacks are arrested at 4 times the rate of whites. Now, in some places, like Minneapolis, Washington, D.C., Iowa, it's 8 times the rate. So why in the world would you be arresting black Americans at 8 times the rate, or even nationwide at 4 times the rate of whites? They're using it at the same rate. You have no excuse.
If you're a young black man walking around the streets of London today, you are 9 times more likely to be stopped and searched on suspicion of carrying drugs.
I've risen through classes, so I know, the difference. Growing up in Pittsburgh, just being on the streets, if I got, caught with some weed, they're gonna look at me as I'm selling some weed or I'm trying to get some weed to one of their kids. I look like a threat. But when I started rapping and started associating myself with other people, started getting money, and they're like, oh, he's not dangerous. He can smoke.
The war on drugs is one of those issues that highlights very clearly there is one law for the rich and powerful and one law for the rest of us.
HSBC is a giant bank that actually laundered money for the Mexican drug cartels, billions of dollars. Nobody went to jail.
Naturally, if there's a big bank that is laundering money for drug cartels, they should face a federal prosecution and criminal charges. But that's not what happened. They got a fine of $1.9 billion.
Well, what's a fine to HSBC? It's pocket change. It's one of the costs of doing business, and nobody goes to jail. And a mother of 4 is arrested for $30 worth of pot, and she's put in jail for 10 years. There's a simple difference. The people at HSBC are in the elite. The woman with the $30 worth of pot is not. Every animal that's ever had a hierarchical social structure going all the way back to lizards, lobsters, and puppy dogs has built that structure on prohibition. And there's always been a chicken at the bottom of the pecking order. And the one on the bottom of the pecking order ends up in a miserable, god-awful, picked on, pecked on state. And that isn't mankind's social invention. That is Mother Nature's social invention. Does that mean it's good? Hell no. And it's our job to reverse it, natural or not. Empathy is all it really takes to open up the avenues of outrage and realize how appalling this is. Let's remember something, boys and girls. Jails are there for people who hit us over the head when we're walking down the street. Jails are there for people who break into our homes and loot the place. Jails are there for people who do genuine harm. So I have no right to put them in jail for having a different lifestyle than mine. In fact, if I were to do that, it would be criminal.
And yet, the war on marijuana continues on. Only now with new medical discoveries. You might ask yourself, what possible health benefits could an illegal plant have? The answer is starting to become more clear. It begins with something that each and every one of us has. It's something called the endocannabinoid system.
We think of marijuana as this violent, unnatural intrusion on human biology. It's not. We are built with all kinds of receptors for cannabis.
Cannabis mimics endogenous chemicals that we already produce in the body called endocannabinoids. That's why we have receptors that pretty well fit cannabis.
Cannabinoids, are these 20 carbon molecules that we produce, that the plant produces. There's over 100 of them in the plant, and these two systems work together to regulate cell cluster, cell, and intracellular functions. All the cannabinoids do is help cells function. They don't care what the cell does. They don't care if it's contracting, secreting thyroid, synthesizing this, remodeling bone. It doesn't matter. Just they're doing something, and they do it a little more effectively. Western medicine has never seen a substance like this. We like single drug, single function, and you come along with a molecule that may have an interface inside of every cell and help it function more effectively. And really, it's a hard one to imagine.
I can't find any real legitimate doctor that thinks smoking marijuana is good for anybody. Sure, it may relieve pain temporarily, but a fifth of Jack Daniels might do the same thing, and nobody's calling that medicine, right?
People who say there is no established medical use of marijuana simply don't know what they're talking about. It's so versatile.
It seems every day when I open up the news, there's another report on cannabinoids having some type of medical utility.
Control of muscle spasticity, multiple sclerosis,
glaucoma, colitis,
nausea, pain,
migraine headaches. There are hundreds of reasons that people find marijuana useful.
That's why I look so good after 41 years in the game.
It is the most non-toxic medicine I have ever encountered. Once it's free of the prohibition tariff, it's going to be much less expensive than the pharmaceutical products which it will replace.
Think of a strain as a little chemistry lab, an organic chemistry lab, because what's happening is Mother Nature is creating her own cannabinoid profile. For instance, you could smoke a variety or use a variety that would help you with your headache, or I could use a variety that might help me with my back pain.
If an AIDS patient comes in and they have problems eating or they can't sleep, okay, you can't eat, you can't sleep, you know for sure the indica is going to put you down. It's going to relax you 100%. It's going to give you appetite. And you don't want to give him a sativa because you give him a sativa, he's going to be up thinking all night.
So it's about genes. It is about this kind of character of plant can do this and this kind of plant can do that. It's very important to keep these gene marks, that's the original ones. It could be the medicine that we need.
What is a landrace? A landrace is basically a species of marijuana that's indigenous to an area and growing there for hundreds of years in a certain area.
Cannabis is from all over the world. So we have Afghan varieties, Indian varieties.
In Colombia, you have the famous Santa Marta, Punta Roja. In Central Africa, you will have the Malawi Gold. When I started this whole new series of strain hunting, it was to show the world how much people depend on marijuana around the world. We estimate that probably around 200 to 300 million people, families, are depending on this crop. It's still a drug in most countries, so the police takes it, or it's expensive, so robbers will steal it. And these are areas where the UN or other big international NGOs like UNESCO never will come. In these very remote areas, there are a lot of very nice land races. And we would like to preserve these land races for the future, so we try to obtain them and find them and bring them back. We have new varieties that we can play with to see if they will have any benefit for the future, medicinal or recreational. It's like getting a new athlete in your team that you can crossbreed and create a new variety of marijuana.